Tonight, we take a look at the new Hulu original Reboot. Then we continue our Star Trek Deep Space Nine discussion. And after that, we will conclude with a special memorial tribute to Louise Fletcher. All this coming up right now on The Writer Brothers. And welcome back to your Tuesday night home this week for Hulu's original Reboot and, of course, Star Trek Deep Space Nine. I am joined by Mr. Pollo Zapatos and, of course, Corione, Witch in Residence. Gentlemen, how are you doing this fine Tuesday evening?
Doing awesome.
And we would, of course, like to just take a real quick shout out, of course. Our thoughts and prayers are with the Cuban people that recently suffered Hurricane Ian, and of course, a lot of my friends and family that are going through the storm as it kind of brushes alongside Key West, and then is sadly likely to go impact Tampa as a category. So we are thinking of you guys a lot, and well, if you're able to tune in and escape the storm for a couple hours, we'd love to have you for the discussion. All right, enough reality for a bit. Let's go ahead and dive into what we're here for, and that is to escape from reality, and that is to discuss the new Hulu original sitcom within a sitcom, Reboot. Corione, you just have this fresh on your brain.
Yeah.
So why don't you go ahead and start it off? We're just kind of doing an overall summary. We realize with comedy, we learned our lesson with what we do in the shadows. We can kind of touch on stuff a bit of an overview, and we'll probably get back to this show at a later time. But we're going to go ahead and we're going to cover, because I think 4 episodes are actually out now. I watched all 4. I don't know how many you guys got through, but whatever number works for you.
I just got through the first one so far.
Okay.
But the basic premise is, I mean, we've all seen Hollywood reboot everything imaginable. And this show is taking us through a comedic look at what one of those reboots would look like. The show, they seem to be... Not to
mention that it actually listed all of the current reboots.
Well, exactly.
That Hulu exec meeting was like... I had to stop and think, because I'm just like... my brain wants to fail right now.
Well, the thing of it is, I've been in that meeting. I've been in that Hulu exec meeting, so I know I can say with pure honesty, that was played almost completely straight. It's just so farcical that you think it wouldn't be real life, but I assure you it is. But yeah, so the basic premise is we're being taken through the reboot of a family ties, step-by-step style show that they're attempting to reboot. The woman that they've brought in to run the show wants it to be have a little bit more comedy, but be a little grittier, a little realer. We do have to
interrupt. We do have fan mail from Arendi. Says, escaping reality, what is real? How do you define real? You're talking about what you can feel, what you can smell, what you can taste and see, then real is simply electric signals interpreted by your brain. For too long didn't read, I think, therefore I am.
My response to that would be, dude, remember the song Time Killer? What's reality compared to me? But anyway.
Well, aren't we just full of ourselves all of a sudden?
Yeah.
Anyway.
Let's get back onto Earth. Reality is what's real, and what's fake isn't real.
Reality is that we had fall where John and I live, and then we're back to summertime, which has been the pattern all year, because in April we went back to February, and now here we are about literally on the dawn of October.
Didn't it snow in May?
I think it did.
Yeah.
On the dawn of October, it's 90 degrees outside.
Yeah, it's like Mai Tai season out there. Yeah.
Yeah.
At any rate, so the new showrunner wants to take it in kind of a darker, more gritty, more realistic kind of approach. And they find out that the rights holder wants to take it in the original campy style setup. And we then find out near the end of the first episode that it turns out that the original showrunner and the new showrunner are related. So this one takes a lot of it really takes it to task on, you know, the style of diva actor and actresses, on the nonsense that can happen in the background of a show, and the producers who simultaneously want to be edgy but don't want to dare take a risk for fear of insulting and screwing up fans. So that kind of weird dichotomy of massive egos and general insane hijinks that you only get from creative people are played to comedic effect throughout this entire series. I gotta say, having experienced the edges of what Hollywood tends to look like and behave like, and the political nonsense that goes along in the background, yeah, this feels like, you know, some dude like Cameron is gonna watch this and be like, yeah, this is just a slice of life. Right? You know, dude like me sits there going like, I think I've worked with those actors. And, you know, especially with like Johnny Knox. Man, Johnny Knoxville is you know, he's every every actor who winds up letting the money go to their head. I believe it's Jordan Peele, I want to say.
No, Keegan-Michael Key.
Or no, Keegan-Michael Key. My apologies, Keegan-Michael Key. Yo, man, that dude is every pretentious actor ever to exist. We have the fantastic little starlet who managed to score a unique marriage, which I'm sure is trying to be a play on Meghan Markle. And then we have a kid who was a child star who is starting to realize that they are no longer cool enough to be a child star, and this one never was.
It's an adult that's still playing a child star.
Yeah, fair enough.
Like he full on owns that he's still a child star. He's just not realizing that he's a 24-year-old child star.
Yeah, I like the way you put it. Yeah, 100%. And I mean, the shenanigans and the hijinks that we get up to, even in the first episode, honestly, I mean, you know, the kind of behaviors that you randomly find inside actors' trailers are 100% there. And just the craziness and nonsense about it, it got me. I was like, okay, yep, this is worth my eyeballs for at least an hour or two. So I can't wait to see where this goes.
I'm so happy how close it is.
Real quick, Randy writes in, am I right assuming you guys haven't seen The Matrix in a while? I had a feeling you were quoting a movie. It didn't click in my head right away. But it's still that's one of those quotes from that movie, though, that really transcends the film itself and is definitely something to ponder.
But that's only depending on how much influence we put on those electrical signals, the worlds we've created in our brain, and then whether or not our eyes are lying to us.
And speaking of worlds created in our brain, what's your take on Reboot before we get off on a tangent?
Well, yeah, so for Reboot, the biggest thing to me is like, I'm so happy that it's not Curb Your Enthusiasm, but it's just as funny. Right out the gate, I felt like I was walking into season 7 of Curb. Like, whereas like Curb is all about Larry David and his hijinks throughout life, and it's hilarious. This is a whole thing about just the realities of working in the sitcom world and in Hollywood, and it's still like Curb Your Enthusiasm kind of funny. And I think that that's such a new thing to just walk into. And also, like, especially in today's time, like Curb Your Enthusiasm's on like season 12, and it wasn't until season 12 that I went back to season 7 and rewatched it all to catch up. Like, Reboot opened strong, and now I'm mad that there's nothing to go back to and like binging. And that's what I love about this show, is like, for the first time in my life that I can think of, there's an actually good sitcom that's brand new with all of its own realities going on.
Well, there are. I can actually. You can go back with this show, sort of. You could check out Stephen Levitin's other works. I think that's how you say it. That's what it looks like. I thought it was
Sounds like
Leviathan for the longest time, and then I realized there's no H or I or A or N. Anyway, but yeah, so you could check out his other stuff because he did create Modern Family, and he also did another show way back in the 90s called Just Shoot Me, which I
Just Shoot Me, I enjoyed.
Well, okay, that's wild because I've already binged Modern Family, and that's awesome because like that's Modern Family was one of those ones that it took me a while to finally like sit down and watch because growing up watching it, I was like, this show is dumb, and it is to a kid, but to every parent and every person who has friends that are parents, it's hilarious.
Yeah, to me it felt like it was trying to borrow too much from Malcolm in the Middle and The Office at first, but then when I gave
at
it
that time, yeah,
but when I gave it some chance later on, I was like, all right, this show has its moments, and it even has, and this is the other thing I do appreciate about this show, is it does get pretty raunchy, it gets pretty degenerate, but it also counterpunches in the same manner with its wholesome values. And so if it's reaching a certain audience and trying to teach them some good things, then I think it's doing a pretty okay job. I do wish...
That I thought was actually one of the cool things is that it really shows the experience of writers. Like, they walk into those rooms expecting political correctness because that's what everybody says about Hollywood, and it turns out that's just what the Hollywood's media sells, that's what Hollywood is doing internally. But that's what I like about this show. It really does feel like an actual like introspection into the Hollywood atmosphere while also still being a comedy.
Yeah, like the actors, the characters of the actors that we have in this show, I feel like you should definitely do as a short. They should have done as a short, like, these are the 5 people you'll meet in Hollywood, right? And just showed it off, because I feel like that would have been perfect. You know, we've seen all of these characters. We've met people who have, you know, the rumors of what they're like in real life play out exactly like this, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's part of the reason why these characters work so well. I mean, I don't know anything about Johnny Knoxville personally, but H. Marie keeps telling me that Johnny Knoxville is playing Johnny Knoxville.
Yes.
As himself, which I'm like, there's moments of his where I'm like, yeah, I relate to that. And then he goes and does something else. I'm like, I don't want to relate to that. I don't think you know which one I'm talking.
It's not that you don't relate to it. It's that you don't want to relate.
Yeah, that's what I meant. I don't want to.
The funniest thing about that whole interaction that you're talking about is, aren't they the same age? So it's not, if anything, like that's the relationship he wanted to luck into. I don't want to ruin it for you, Corion, but like.
Oh, how many episodes did you get through, Corion?
I got through the first one.
Oh,
I just wanted to be super fresh for it. But guys, do not worry about it at all, because as soon as this stream is over, that's what I'm going to be binging tonight. So
yeah.
Don't worry.
So yeah, then you got something great to look at. The whole writers' room episode. So I think it's the second episode.
The whole episode was talking about that, like, can't get out of scene A. And the whole time, the writers never get out of scene A.
So what happens is, Corio, is Hannah has a bunch of new writers, of course, because she's the new, showrunner. Yeah. And Dad brings in all of his old school guys, and so
after meeting all the new ones,
right? After meeting all the new ones,
Dad tries to do it with the new ones, and he's like, all right. And at lunch, he goes and grabs new ones.
Goes and gets his old buddies, and they're like raunchy, offensive, politically incorrect, and so there's a big clash between the writers until they find something to unite on, and it's a really great message to send to people. Like this, guys, it's not about agreeing with everything and not being offended all the time. It's about finding that common ground, and this show, that's what really won me over, was that episode, honestly.
That's the crazy thing, is this show has been doing a lot of things that I've noticed like dramas and action movies are getting really into, which is like taking characters to the full, like who are they as a person, what are their character feelings, character like synopsis. And now suddenly like Reboot is doing that from the comedic standpoint. Like these people's lives are in no way perfect, just like everybody else's. But each one
Except
of them
mine.
is not just a paper cut of a trope. Like we don't have the fool, we don't have the jock, we don't have the this nerd. We just have 4 actors that started at different points in their lives, and while they were in the industry, it chewed them out and spit out meet the 4 people. And this is how they're all like, they have deep psychological issues, they have deep emotional instability issues, commitment issues, forbidden love issues. Like
Yeah, they're
going through
actors.
them.
I mean,
Well, no, yeah, but also like they're actors that are actually acting these feelings out, not in a corny way, not in a let's get this resolved by the end of the episode and I'm not a narcissist anymore. Like there's this whole playing on the psychological failures of being a human, and then not to mention the like the whole premise of it being a dad and daughter reboot. And I want to say it was at the end of the first episode you learned that the whole show was based on the dad and his life. And so the big dark secret is that like she was the daughter that was like left behind the whole time, and that is like so messed up. If we're watching this in like Gone Girl terms, like that's a great thriller. I did not expect that ending, but in this it was hilarious. I don't feel bad for her, even though I do feel bad for her. Like I'm still laughing at her struggle and her suffering, but also like I'm not emotionally bent up about laughing at her.
yeah, I'm gleefully enjoying her suffering, which is the sign of a good comedy, right?
And then that keeps building, and that's the scene that Parker's describing. That's like the best part, is because like we can still laugh at our sorrow and still be suffering. Like we can be laughing while mid-suffering, and that juxtaposition makes the laughter even better. Like for some reason it does lower the suffering, but it also makes it funnier the worse it sucks.
Absolutely. So yeah, I mean, honestly, I really enjoyed it. I definitely think after the first episode, this is not necessarily a show I would say is for everyone. Like it earns its,
TVMA for sure.
Yeah, it earns its mature audience. Absolutely. That being said, I appreciate a good mature audience comedy every once in a while. I feel like MA is the perfect spot for a comedy every once in a while, just because you need to have that freedom to be able to take it to raunchy to sometimes blue places for the gag.
As much as I love the show Scrubs, I think that it should have all right, so
Scrubs would have been a good show if they had been allowed an MA rating.
That's just
a radio
though.
edit version and a non-edit version.
And Hulu has an opportunity to do exactly that right now, and I really think they should, because this may come as a shock to some people out there, but not everybody who's religious is degenerate. I know. I was kind of shocked too to meet some non-believing people that didn't care for degeneracy, but they exist. There's a lot of them. And so I do think that since they have sub and dub versions of anime shows, I think that they could definitely reach a wider audience if they say, yeah, here's the mature audience version for the ones who, want to see that. And I'll still probably watch that one, admittedly. But here's the grandma-friendly TV-14 version that still has all the same hints, but you don't have to deal with the swearing, you don't have to see stuff that you might not want to see, and you still get to enjoy the story. And
at least not see while your grandma's in the room.
You know that's the moment that she's going to walk in, too. And I think that wouldn't diminish the quality of the show at all. I think people would gravitate towards the version of the story they want to watch, and they'd still be able to discuss around the water cooler. Oh yeah, I like Reboot. I personally prefer the TV-14 version, but the story's still there. The characters are still that. The implications don't go away with a TV-14 version. But
yeah, no. If anything, the only thing that goes out is a few like minutes of funny, like of raunchy funny.
Yeah, of like teen comedy funny, right? Like,
and
like
there's
or
nothing
just
wrong
like
with
National Lampoon raunchy, like
right.
It, like all the things that I would assume you're cutting out, Parker, are not necessarily
Swears, nudity,
part of the world
that's about
building. They don't mess with the exposition or anything like that.
yeah, I mean, well, okay, we should paraphrase that of they don't mess with anything as far as we know right now. They could harken back to something that would be mandatory, but we don't know yet. But as it stands right now, yeah, you could totally do a video, like a TV-14 edit and an MA edit, and release them both and just purely base it on...
Let the audience decide how much they want to subject themselves to. All right, Arende writes in, I also like the CGI animated version of Reboot as a kid. Yeah, me too. Been years since I've seen that show, and that's I knew when I saw Reboot on there, I was like, wait, really? And then I saw it was not that Reboot. I was like, what, really? So
yeah, I was half expecting during this whole show for a GameCube to drop down and the whole thing to change.
You know, with how meta ridiculous this show gets, I won't put it past them for, like, I don't know, a Halloween episode or an April 1st gag. Like that is something
I
they
feel
could
like that's
do.
Gonna be like this season finale. Like they're just gonna look into the camera and go, "You all thought this was gonna be the GameCube one."
Yeah.
Yeah,
and
right.
It just closes dark.
Or better yet, I could see them going. This would be a stretch. Don't get me wrong. This is like out there as an idea. But I think what would be hilarious is if they did one episode to the similar vein that they did Supernatural. When they had the Supernatural episode where they end up in the alternate universe on the set of Supernatural. Instead, you have them somehow end up in their own real life show.
You know what I would do? Because I know the name Reboot and everything else. Nah. I would have a harken back to one of the original episodes where there was some problem with the family's GameCube. And at the end of it, the GameCube gets dropped on one of the actors and knocked unconscious. Right? I mean, it practically writes itself.
Arende,
all the other actors are just staring directly at the camera.
Exactly.
Yeah. Arende
As the cube hits, you just look over and they're all staring.
Warning, incoming game. Warning, incoming game.
There we go.
There it is. Yeah, no, I think that, it's definitely got an audience in its current form, and I think that people that don't mind the mature aspects, like the unsafe. That's the other thing, too, is I personally like one of the reasons I'm sorry to mention Lower Decks again, but one of the reasons I like it this season is they decided, even though it streams on Paramount Plus and they can do the TVMA stuff, they ended up censoring the hard swears. And I don't know why, but that somehow makes the show more enjoyable. It's like, well, they said it, but you didn't hear them say it, but you got the bleep on top of it. So
I don't know. I feel like after, Lower Decks season 2, they've already gone beyond having to worry about swears.
I know. So it's a little weird, but I like it. But anyway, Lower Decks is probably one we could just recap later. I know they're going to DS9 this season, so it kind of works out for us. But we'll argue
Lower
about
Decks,
that.
it's like you said at the top of this one for comedy. The best thing about comedy is that it's more meant to just be discussed as to why it brought us joy. Not necessarily that we're looking forward to get our next dose. Like, yeah, we always want it, but also
y'all got any
when it
more
comes,
of them
let's
shows?
like explain it.
Yeah, y'all got any more of them good comedies?
The Writer Brothers
y'all
does not
pay
advocate
Dave
for
Chappelle
hard
to
drug
make another
use, but
Dave Chappelle show.
your body, your choice.
Yes.
I don't know. I feel like when it comes to like these comedy shows, and Reboot, I think, is one of my favorite meta-analysis that you can do a meta-analysis on. Like, there's so much about it that's just good in-depth writing, as far as like narrowing down each character, having all of their own weights and measures, but then on top of that, being able to address the fact that, like, yeah, we know we're Hollywood in a Hollywood world making a movie about Hollywood world, and we know that most of you are going to think this is a circle jerk, but watch this. And then it's like, nope, this is a clown car.
That is exactly what I thought during that writer's room, because I had to stop and I looked over at H3 and I go, okay, so it's a show, it's a fictional show that was eventually on one of Hulu's now owned networks. So we're doing a writer's room inside the Hulu exec room about a show that's gonna stream on Hulu while watching a show that's streaming on Hulu.
Yep.
And yes, it felt like a lot of ego and logo stroking there, and I was like, okay, but as it progressed, it really started to get better.
That was actually my favorite thing about it, is when they did the list in the episode 1, all of the stuff that they said Hulu had produced, it was all fake names.
I know.
Yes.
They didn't take credit for anything that they've actually produced, which to me is like, wow, way to actually take your ego out of it a little bit. You know, like, because I could have seen that if it was in Netflix, it'd have been like, yeah, what if we reboot? And they're like, well, we TV adapted The Witcher, and like just go through their entire list, and we'd be like, wow, way to really make yourselves look good, Netflix, or in this case Hulu, way to make yourselves look. And they didn't. They named every reboot that is currently active, but didn't necessarily go, and these are the ones that Hulu's producing and making money off. And I don't know, I like that. But I thought the writer's room thing in episode 2 was so funny in terms of they're talking about all the rules that I've heard in all of my writing classes that I've been taking. And they're doing it exactly like every kid who's ever been to a college writing class would imagine it's supposed to go, especially at the beginning of the episode. And then by like the middle of the episode, they address the fact that they haven't left the writer's room yet. And it's like, what if we were just stuck in scene A the whole episode? And then you go, wait a minute, you guys have been stuck in scene A the whole episode.
Oh yeah, look,
that too is just so clever.
Yeah, like the guys who are writing this, I'm gonna give them a lot of props, because they are taking things to a hilarious meta level that, I mean, other shows have attempted in the past and just never been able to fully grasp. And they're doing a fantastic job of it. They are reaching that, you know, like you can tell that whoever wrote this series originally, who came up with the concept, was just sick and tired of the Hollywood industrial complex and decided to go like take a shot at it. And it turned into this, and it turned out fantastic, because he was like, no, I've had enough of this nonsense. I'm pointing it all out.
And well, that's the best part, is because like you can learn how the system works, because there's actually a lot of like solid teaching points in here. Like the director, rather than taking the time to, or not the director, but the dad, taking the time to like, rather than fix any relationships or work with anybody or make it better, he just had all of his tricks. He's like, writers you treat this way, actors you treat that way. And like, as me being somebody who has interest in joining the industry, like, oh, so if I meet a creative showrunner, he's probably going to think he's in control of the entire world around him and knows how to like talk to everybody in a certain way. But that doesn't mean he's right. Like there's so much of that. Like we have these tried and true, this is how I deal with my job. And then we're watching and we're like, the daughter's like giving him sound advice. Like, no, you should probably talk to the actors and help them out. I was like, no, just give them something shiny. I'll just give them something else to do. And rather than fixing the problem or addressing the problem, he's just like, no, it's not a problem. I'll make it not a problem.
Yeah.
And that's an important thing to realize.
Yeah, honestly, I need to talk to. I think, guys, if you're out there and you're listening, bug Cameron. We need him to weigh in on this show because he's going to be sitting there watching this whole thing. Like, I want to do a live reaction of him watching this show because so much of it is going to be like, I've been that dude. I've been that dude.
You know, that's not something
Wait, so
that I'm.
that's why he talked to me like that.
That's not. That's not something that I would not turn down for hosting on this show either. If you make it happen, I will gladly try to arrange the time and make the effort to do that. Because yes, I'd love to see his real time reaction to it if we can work it out.
Yeah.
If not, then at least get us some follow up because. Yeah, he's quite a unique insight.
And honestly, like, he is the most wonderful human being to talk to. He's a deeply spiritual, friendly, warm, caring human being. But he's also reached that point with the Hollywood machine, I feel like, where he knows it well enough to know all the comings and goings of stuff, and would probably find this hysterical.
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, even just to pick his brain on writing and stuff in general would be fun. But at the same time, because he's such a nice person, everybody wants Cameron.
True. I am going to say, though, that, just to plug Cameron, because he's a good friend and he deserves a little bit of a plug. He does have a Patreon where he does discuss his writing method pretty in depth, and it is worth joining his Patreon. So do give him a check out, guys.
We'll blast that in the chat here shortly.
Because dude is a good friend. He does not get nearly enough credit as he deserves.
Yeah, absolutely. And from what little interaction I've been fortunate enough to have with Cameron, because I mean, he is, and I'm not trying to blow smoke up the guy's hindquarters. Trying to just sound respectful and refer to Cameron. Don't want to swear. He really is. It's because he's so because he is the way he is. He is a popular guy, and he just, he makes time for people when he can. But he's also got, his own mouth to feed and his own
and like 6 million projects on the go.
And so no, absolutely. I'm great. I mean, I am grateful for the time that I've been able to get, and that's not an ass kiss, and nor am I saying this in the hopes that, oh, please come on the show quicker. No, I really mean that. Cameron's a genuine guy, and I try to be a genuine guy, as those of you know on this show. And so when I meet genuine people, especially that are in the Hollywood swamp, I definitely want to give credit to the ones that actually try to make an effort and that actually do be normal people. Not, oh, hey, let's talk about all the stuff I've done. Tell me how great I am. No. We don't do that. I don't do that. If you guys want to do it, that's your business. But I will never give empty praise like that.
I mean, I believe in praise where praise is due.
Yes.
If somebody has done a fantastic job and comes on the show, I will definitely be the first to say, hey, man, I think you did a fantastic job in this. I may also be the guy that says, but what were you thinking when you were doing that other role?
We give honest feedback on this show. We do not hold back. And unless it's like something's, we're not opposed to certain things being told, hey, can you guys drum it up for XYZ? Give us a good reason, we'll hear you out. But ultimately, you come to us, you're coming for the truth, and we're giving to you. And if you don't like it, okay.
But well, no, see, I think that's the funny thing though, is our honest truth isn't also, it's not an attack. We deliver the truth. No. We don't shoot it at you. We don't shove it down your throat, because like our biggest goal is to change.
Yeah.
Unlike the director who's just like, oh no, the fans will like whatever I give them. And it's like, no, we won't. Like, there's a reason why Star Wars is so ingrained in our hearts, and Hawkeye is kind of a fun character in Marvel. Like, the universe itself was written and crafted in such a way that it burned into our hearts. And that's what good writing looks like. That's what good writing is. That's the stuff that Odyssey and Iliad were made of. That's the stuff Shakespeare wrote. And so
and then you have posers like me.
You did pretty good. I enjoyed the book.
Well, then why haven't you bought 6 million copies so I can buy a new trailer?
because if I buy 6 million copies, then I will be building my new trailer out of your book. And I don't think you'd enjoy that.
Sounds like a win-win here. I mean, I just want the money. I don't really care about the fame that much, honestly.
What's the wind resistance of 6 million books?
If someone mistakes, my face for Sam Hyde, I'm not really going to give a shit as long as it's not the FBI.
Yeah,
Well,
fair.
Let's be honest, you'd only be a poser if you were saying that you sold 6 million books right now.
Yeah.
That's
Right,
a poser.
buy a bestseller review, even though I've only sold like 10 copies.
Exactly, and that's the thing that I think a lot of people like us are struggling with these days is like, well, yeah, actually I am kind of good at my job, and everybody at your job is like, yeah, you're good at your job, and then they're like, well, I'm not that good at anything. It's like, no, you learn and practice and execute a skill with precision. Just because it's not everybody's favorite skill to watch on TV, I mean, it's not.
Yeah, and I mean, and let's be honest, when it comes to people in the business, most of the time our honest questions are going to be things like, when you were performing this role, why did you make the following choice? Because we want to understand it so that we can probably learn from it. Not really you bring Jar Jar on here, I'm going to ask him about the accent and what the decision-making process looked like. Not criticizing, just seriously be like, what was the thought? Like, how did you get there, right?
And were you privy to whether or not Jar Jar was supposed to be secretly a Sith Lord?
Well, that's ultimately the most important question, and really the only one that matters.
Also, speaking of somebody who matters, Arende writes in, the fans will like whatever I make. That's the mentality that gave us such wonderful shows as Rings of Power and STD, referring to Star Trek Into Darkness. Or no, wait, sorry, Discovery. One of those is a personal guilty pleasure of mine that I actually absolutely enjoy for my own enjoyment, knowing full well it's a popcorn flick. The other is...
I was nervous he was going to say Scared to Death by Bad Magic Productions over.
No, STD is the slang for Discovery because...
STD.
Or the thing that you need penicillin for, both. Actually, really, you need penicillin for both of them.
Yeah, and I will say
one goes in your eyes, one goes in your butt.
Any writers watching this now or on our podcast later, which shout out to our podcast listeners, thank you guys. I do just want to say, if yes, I did make this book in the hopes that I could sell 6 million copies and all my troubles would be over. Unfortunately, it's not that easy, but I'm going to tell you right now, do it. Doesn't matter what potential outcome is going to be, because at the end of the day, when you hold that copyright in your hand for the first time, there is no other feeling like that in the world, because that is when you know that your legacy is cemented. That really was the moment that I knew I made it. The money that can follow, whether this show blows up or whatever, all that other stuff, and of course when I do finally get around to re-recording the audiobook here very soon, once I don't need my PC on anymore, whatever that's going to be, looking like December now.
Fortunately, you're recording this statement now when you are poor. Nobody can ever say you didn't say it.
Guys, it's not always about the money. And I mean, I've left jobs because of that, because I even got out of the military because the money wasn't enough. Like it just doesn't, for me, it doesn't do anything. And really the biggest hurdle you have to do is finish the damn book or screenplay, whatever you're writing, and just publish it and get it out there. If it's not a resounding success, do what I'm doing. Try again. Well, what I should be doing. I started writing the second one, but then work schedules changed and I need to get back into that routine. I'm going to finish the second book, guys. Don't worry. It's going to happen.
Well, on that note,
unlike some people.
If you've been taking breaks or you're running into roadblocks, who cares? Take your time and write your story. I've been writing the same game for the last 2.5 years, and it's been the most daunting ordeal ever. But today I was able to write 5 pages and actually structure a solid design document based off of all of my little sticky notes and journal entries that I've been making for the last 2.5 years.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Arende writes in, Arende writes in, it says, don't pull a George R. Martin, and yeah. So for me, Arende,
the end.
Yes.
Now. And then get there when you get there, but write the end now so we know, so you know where you're going.
And my story my 3 books have a trilogy. Anything else I add on to the Galaxia universe is going to be, just take that as extra credit. But I promise, we'll have a complete trilogy that will be its own thing, regardless of if I do prequels, sequels, or totally different stories in the same universe. I'm making that commitment now. Unless I get hit by a plane tomorrow, I'm gonna have a trilogy at least, and that I can guarantee.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest. I'm a little hackneyed. I actually do what I'm referring to as the Jim Butcher method of writing, where I actually physically take out a big piece of paper and draw a plot arc and put notes on where things go, just so that if I do get hit by a bus tomorrow and something I've written is somehow popular, somebody else has the material that they could finish it off if needed.
Absolutely have your outline. Like, it doesn't have to be 100%, and it doesn't have to be followed.
Write it.
But have your beginning and your end, and then just figure out the milestones to get to that point. That's how I did it, and that's how I got to where I completed a book. Arende writes in again, next book may as well be called Winds of Neverwinter, and yeah, the D&D reference was intentional.
Yeah, I mean, look, here's my thing about George. George, I think, is painfully aware that he never has to finish the series.
Oh, yeah.
And because he's under zero pressure to finish the series, realistically, there's no point in him doing it, because at this point, no matter what the ending is, it's going to disappoint somebody. And that's all he's going to hear in his own head. So he's almost better off not finishing it.
I don't know if it's necessarily that last part, because like I think the biggest issue is the fact that no matter what he puts out, it's better than what already came out. So now it's just like, if I do it, it's fan service, and I can take a break and do it when I get to it. Because there was that rush, but like when the last book was used for the screenwriting, and he's like, yeah, I'm burning through this next book, it will be done in time. And then it came out like season 7, the book, I think, right? He wrote a book that came out during like the season 7 release, and then from there, once season 7 was going on, it was already downhill. And so by the time he was like, all right, I gotta turn and burn another one, and then he watched the view drop, and he's just like, oh, I guess I'll get to it when I get to it. And that's fair too, because like there's this, like, I think this idea that we have to finish every single thing. One sec. Rendy writes in that case, he may as well be honest and outright say he's burned out of writing those books. Instead, he's leaving this audience to dry. And I totally hear you. I don't know. I've never met George. I just assume that this to me plays into that subconscious. Like, he's already, whatever ending he does right is better than season 8, because he can always compare it to season 8.
Well, unless of course his actual ending was season
8. Which there is that theory out there.
Right. Well,
that he basically gave him the outline for the book, and then they took it and built the script. I've heard those theories. It's unconfirmed, but it also hasn't exactly been denied either.
Yeah, and this is something I think that like plays into what I'm seeing with A, what he did with Elden Ring, and then B, what he's doing with House of the Dragon, is I feel like he very much is, like you're saying, Corion, he drew the plot line for the whole thing out, and every book he's written has a plot line, but like I'm getting the vibe that he really liked writing House of the Dragon, and now he's really liking being a key component in the production of House of the Dragon, because like it's a really Spark Notes book that is very open for interpretation, and now we're watching it be interpreted, and it seems like he's putting a ton of effort into a correct interpretation.
Okay, so I'm gonna put my theory out there, okay? And I'm going to say for the record, I have zero facts to back this up. I don't want this to be, this is all my personal opinion. Take from it what you will, all of that. I personally think that because George found success later in life, as opposed to being a success from a younger point, he suddenly wanted all the toys and fame and power and whatnot that he didn't get previously for his previous works. If Beauty and the Beast had been the level of amazement that we were getting from Game of Thrones, we would have gotten a completed Game of Thrones from George R.R. Martin, but we didn't. And the reason why he doesn't feel any need to is because he's too busy being his version of a successful writer, right? Take, for example, a writer like Nora Roberts, okay? She writes like at least 4 books a year or something crazy like that. She's invested almost all of her money into basically buying a town. She more or less is living the dream of that era of writer, okay? And that genre of writer. I think George is more or less doing the same thing. He's so in love with the trappings that success has given him that he doesn't feel the need to write anymore because he's already got the success he wanted. He's got his $1 million, his movie theater, his train, his all kinds of craziness. He doesn't need to do anymore.
He bought a train.
Yeah, he bought a train. He also
he doesn't need to write. I think what if the big thing is like he wrote this one way so that because he knew this was the only way to get the success. And now that he's there, he's like working in, because he really just seems like a guy who loves fantasy. He doesn't necessarily seem to be like the guy that loves writing fantasy. He likes directing it and creating it.
I think he's the guy who likes making money off fantasy, personally.
You have to agree, Corey.
Fair. That's one of the best things to make money off of, right? Nobody can ever say your product was fake because you go, yeah, it's literally called fantasy.
Yeah, like that's the idea, right? Like, I mean, now there are some times where I have commented like, no, that's fake. But anyway, like that's how I feel about it. Is he's so in love with his own success, but that he doesn't see beyond it.
Like, give him a break.
Well,
like if he was a 30-year-old writer pulling this, I'd be like, yo, bro.
Look,
like he's like what, 70?
Yeah, no, like, look, he's got his money, he's got his fame, he's got his wealth and power and everything. Like, dude, you can do whatever you want, but here's my problem, okay? And
if you're gonna do nothing, finish the books.
Well, here's my issue with it, and I think this is really what it boils down to. I feel as a writer, if you are not doing a one-and-done story, you are effectively creating a contract with the people who have bought the original book that the finale is coming, right?
Yeah,
the dragons are coming.
Like, sort of to your word, like it's part of your word.
Yeah, well, I mean, like
you're buying my name. My name comes with the end of the series.
In video games, we call this an early access story, right? Like we would 100%. This is early access. A trilogy is effectively on book 1 an early access series where you are paying to get the other 2 parts of the story to go with it. That's how I view it, as like an early version of early access. And, by buying into those first books, we effectively have a gentleman's agreement that we will get a finale to the story. Now, here's the thing. How many times have we ever seen, like, look, you can choose to break a gentleman's agreement. Okay? That doesn't make you a
monster.
It doesn't make you a monster. It doesn't make you a liar. It does not make you, though, the person, like a person that we should be agreeing with further to give them more latitude to put us into this situation again. And that's really what I'm worried about with stuff like House of the Dragon, with the Duncan Egg series, is that we're only going to get the first third of any story George R.R. Martin sells.
Yeah, so
that's my concern.
Arende adds a good point to all this discussion. Arende writes in, look at R.A. Salvatore. The guy writes like a freaking machine. He because he loves the stories he writes. He has money, but his love of writing never took precedence over the fame and power it brought. And that's kind of the balance I'm hoping for. I don't know if I'll write. I'm assuming this guy puts out stories frequently. I'm not super familiar with the name, but I'm probably familiar with the work.
So R.A. Salvatore writes a lot of the Forgotten Realms books. He's the guy who created Dris Duarden. He's very, very famous in the Dungeons and Dragons novel kind of area.
Okay. Well, and yes, that I can't say for sure that I wouldn't do the same thing as George R. R. Martin. So I don't hold a whole lot of contempt or judgment towards him, but I do look at him and I go, okay, I'm going to at least deliver one set of 3 books. And that's it. I'm not, that's what I'll guarantee. Beyond that, for me, it's probably going to be endorsing fan fiction stories based on my universe, and then maybe adding something new or doing something completely different. I haven't quite decided yet. I would like to have more money so I can have more time to put out more books, and that's really the kick in the balls for me. Is I've still got to have a job along with this job, along with trying to make time for
everything else
as is. So I don't have the luxury of buttloads of money, and that's probably the other reason why. I'm assuming it's a Mr. Salvatore. I think you established
Mr. Salvatore. Yes.
Yeah. I'm assuming Mr. Salvatore. That's probably part of the reason he's able to crank out so many books, is because he's got his financial security, and that's what I would like to eventually get into. But I'm not going to sit here and go, if you guys buy my book, I'm going to, make a bajillion different stories, because honestly, guys, I don't know how I'm going to be if I get to that point. I don't.
Yeah, I mean, personally, if I was ever going to write a trilogy or build a world that other people would be interested in, I think one of the things I would definitely do is leave a section of the lore intentionally unexplored to allow other writers access to it. For example, one of my favorite authors, Larry Niven, wrote his Known Future series, which the Ring World is a major part of. But one of the things he did is he mentions in the books that humans and another species, the Kzinti, fought a large series of wars. But then what he did was he allowed other writers to tell the stories of those wars, producing anthologies with them. And I think that is a fantastic way to allow your community to add to your universe that you've created.
Well, and that's one of the reasons why George Lucas was so universally loved despite the prequels, was because I think before he even began work on the prequels, he came out and he declared that anything, as long as it doesn't mess with his stories, would be considered canon. And so, yeah, there's conflicts in the expanded universe, the true canon, as I call it, because Disney Wars is fan fiction mostly, sans Solo and Rogue One. So it's that, I think, is really, that's what I want to do. Is I want to basically be able to say, you guys want to add to my story? I would like a small cut of that. And as long as you don't mess with my story, or if you take my story and put it in its own universe, I'm probably likely going to agree with it. Now, that's not a green light endorsement. We'll see. We'll take it on a case-by-case basis. Arendi writes in, same for me. I'm trying to become a full-time bookkeeper, but right now I have a job I have grown to dislike. Oh, thank you for the correction. But it pays for the financial sinkhole that is starting a beekeeping business. We all gotta grind the grind, unfortunately. That's our system that we have right now, and I hate it just as much as most anybody else. I think Coriolan still loathes it, even though he's got all those Canadian hookups. But it's still not the utopia that they talk about.
Well, first, for the record, we prefer the term workers' paradise. But anyway, no, honestly, look, I work a daytime IT job. I do the YouTube thing, and when I'm not doing any of that, I will occasionally be doing weddings. I will be doing funerals. I'm visiting people in hospitals, doing the priest work that I do. So, I mean, I keep myself busy doing that. But, I would love to be able to sit down and write more. You guys have seen some of the work that I've produced, the short stories, that I feel like it's starting to come together. I'm starting to find a voice. I consider myself an incredibly young and incredibly naive writer.
Same.
And I guess the only way I can describe it is when the feeling moves me to write, I sit down and I write. And it doesn't matter if I've got a million other things going on in my life, that art has its own spot, that everything else gets pushed to the side and I make room to write that. Even if it's like a paragraph a week, I take the time to do at least that.
My good buddy, he sometimes pops in on the chat, goes by Rinshar on the YouTubes. His strategy for me, which I need to get back to. I started this strategy, but I failed to get. But it's a long story. I've had an acceptable reason, but it's now time to get back into the routine. His thing was never have a day without doing something creative. So it doesn't necessarily matter. Like, it doesn't have to be to your specific project, but the goal is to keep that creative mindset going. So whether or not you sit down and do some world building, some story arcing, or something completely different, as long as it's creative and productive, that'll help contribute to your projects. And so for writing a book, for example, my goal is 1 sentence a day. Now that doesn't seem like much, right? 1 sentence a day, well, that's going to be 365 sentences, right? Wrong. What 1 sentence a day, sometimes I do use it. I go, yep, I'm writing my 1 sentence and then I'm done. Other days, 1 sentence becomes 2, becomes 3, becomes paragraphs, becomes pages, becomes chapters. That's the whole idea, is to not put the pressure on yourself to constantly be writing, but to give you an excuse to sit down, to pull up that page, to write your sentence, and then if you feel the inspiration flow from there, let it ride. Or be accomplished in that you did your 1 sentence for the day.
Yeah, it's like a minimum, basically. Right? Like just the decision that I'm going to do something today to further my art.
Yeah. My biggest thing was getting back into the literal practice of writing. Like, I started realizing the more I just keep paper of any kind nearby, which later turned into just always having a journal, like the fact that I would write down notes and just the whole experience of like to me, it's very much at times the Charlie from Always Sunny meme, where he's got the thing in the background and there's all these tapes. Like, I had at one point, I had my office entirely covered. The entire door was entire sticky notes, all about the process of my current writing.
Yeah.
So like,
Corione,
don't be afraid to get weird with it.
No, don't. And Corione, can you take care of that fan mail, please?
Oh, let me bring it up. I don't actually have it up in front of me. I was focused on the show.
There's
hold on. Here we go. So which one are we looking at here?
The last one,
by the way, if any of you come to Montreal, the Laurentians area, I still have 20 plus gallons of honey for sale. Hee hee. Well, so Montreal is about 4 hours drive from where I am.
How long is that in U.S. units again?
In freedom units, you're looking.
4 hours.
Oh,
yeah, well,
okay,
it's still about 4 hours of driving, right? But I would say it's
that was,
probably.
That was the joke, Corione.
Yeah, okay.
What time is that in Spanish again? 12 noon? How many hours?
Yeah, fair enough. I was gonna say in freedom units, I think it's
barbecue sauces divided by 3 bald eagles.
Yeah, it's like 580 bald eagles, right? Stretched out, right? But anyway, yeah, like honestly, no, Montreal is cool. I got in a fair bit of trouble last time I was there because they demanded I speak French, and I started replying in German. And there's a thing where people get a little.
You pulled a Joel McHale, nice.
Yeah, well, when you do that, and the cop goes, "Huh?" He goes, "Excuse me," and I respond with, "Ha! Got you! I knew you spoke English." They tend to get a little upset, but
yeah. All right.
Yeah, there we go. Arendi's like, ha ha ha, in German.
Good discussion on writing. Speaking of good writing, we have to continue our Star Trek Deep Space Nine discussion with Babel and Captive Pursuit. So, We're probably going to lead more towards the second episode of this week because I feel there's more to get into. But anything you guys want to quickly discuss on Babel real quick before we kind of tear it apart and move on?
Well, I mean, O'Brien must suffer.
Duh.
Right?
The beginning
this
of
is
O'Brien
going to be
must suffer.
Yeah, this is O'Brien must suffer the early days.
Yeah.
We haven't tortured him nearly enough yet. But don't worry, we'll get there. We will get there.
Yeah.
And you know what? I liked the concept. I liked the idea of this episode a great deal.
Yes.
I don't know about the execution per se,
Yes.
but I loved the idea of it.
I both love and loathe the idea. And I think some people have, in previous discussions I've been a part of, they really hit the nail on the head with this one. It's a little bit of it's definitely science fantasy. Definitely nowhere near science. We cross into the fantasy, not only because, first of all, we have a virus that, Bashir doesn't undersell it when he calls it a stroke of genius, because it is a stroke of genius. It can affect multiple species in the exact same way, which, if you actually study biology, you realize is ridiculous.
Well, that's the more fiction part, but the actual symptom of language, that's actually a real thing that military vets are suffering from JPA inhalation.
Wow, I didn't actually know that. So thanks for bringing that knowledge to the table. Okay, so there is some more
it has something
plausibility
to do
to
with scrambling some gland in your brain that is the thing that takes in.
Yeah.
And then I've heard that theoretically it can get so bad, like, that you can't actually say the words you intend to say and you'll just say the wrong word.
Yeah, I mean, I do that all the
But
time
yeah,
anyway.
Major
But
connections to JPA.
yeah, it's
Well, you shouldn't have been drinking all that JPA then, dude.
yeah. What were you thinking? Oh, he wasn't, because he was a
I was
Marine.
trying to party, dude. I like
It
to
is.
party.
There it is.
I don't need brain cells to party.
Crayons and JPA.
Let's go get drunk and stupid. Woo!
So
Arendi-
Arendi
Go
writes
for it.
in, Bruce Willis suffers from aphasia. Don't know if it's as bad as it was in the episode of Deep Space Nine. Look, my understanding is
there you
Bruce
go.
Willis
There's
is...
an extra. That wasn't a fake. I thought you were gonna say that's a fake disease. No.
No, I
no.
thought aphasia
It's-
was about losing your hair.
That's
No, that's
alopecia.
it.
Yeah. Yeah. That's right.
AKA Jaden Smith.
Yeah.
Sorry.
See, so I had my diseases mixed up the whole time.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's like I said, it's a very interesting concept for an episode, right? Like, how would you operate a station when nobody can communicate? It's literally the Tower of Babel from the Christian Bible. It's an interesting concept. The problem to me was always the execution on it. It felt like we're still in that section of Deep Space Nine where they're really still trying to figure out their feet.
Yeah.
And
I mean, Avery Brooks has himself figured out, but
yeah, but I mean, some of the other characters don't quite have it down yet. And this, unfortunately, really puts a peg on they don't quite have all their characters figured out perfectly yet. But it is an interesting idea, and it is a fascinating question of, could you run things when nobody can understand anybody?
Yeah.
Right? And how important understanding is overall. Like, it's a great episode in that regard, but the execution, like I said, it leaves a little bit to be desired.
A stroke of genius for this virus is a massive understatement, because it affects everybody the same way, exactly the same. There's no variations. Which in reality, as we know, various viruses do affect people differently based on, and we're one species. So how does that...
Not even all computers get infected the same way by malware.
Yeah.
And they're all with the same code, talking to the same codes.
Not only is it a stroke of genius, it's a straight up stroke of, well, I guess not to be
accuracy.
blasphemous, Corione, a stroke of magic.
Yeah, no, I'm down with you, man. Like, this is, I believe the term BFM would be appropriate. Black freaking magic. I'm gonna.
Yeah,
So-
magic spelled with a C.
Yeah, or
Not CK.
Arende there, a stroke of Deus Ex. Yeah, exactly, right?
Yeah, no, the
It,
plot.
it absolutely is.
It's like one of those Ryan George pitch meetings. He's like, "Uh-oh, the virus affects all the species. How so?" Yeah, so the plot can happen.
Oh,
But
dude,
you know
this
what?
is one of those Resident Evil plot infections.
Yeah. Now that all
It just
being
infects
said,
the whole plot.
It's
that
not.
being said,
It's not terrible. It's just fantasy.
now I'm also going to play. I'm gonna be a devil's advocate here and point out one kind of important thing though to keep in mind, and that is that in the Star Trek universe, all sentients in the Milky Way galaxy supposedly have a common ancestry.
That is true.
So it's possible, but you have to get deep in the lore to get there.
It's
Again,
assuming all of the brains have the same gland that aphasia affects.
Well-
and it's affected in the same way.
exactly, and that's my point as
Based on
well.
the
We
same
recently had
carbon
the
makeup.
virus of unspecified origin, go around. What are we on, like 12,000
Round 200?
variant or whatever?
Yeah.
Yeah, the alpha, beta, kappa variant or whatever name they're
The
labeling it.
Megatron variant, I think, at this point.
Yes, because it transforms. That's a good one. Point is, even that affected people differently, and we're all the same species. So, but there was even variations in the various subspecies of human that it was affecting differently, and even had its own patterns. So that's really why, having gone through that very recently, it's like, here's this magical virus that's, behaving exactly this, which makes it even stupider as to why Bashir couldn't find a cure. If it behaves exactly the same, that should, give you a 10 million year research lead, you think?
Yeah, I mean, now, I'm applying computer logic, but I mean, like, when you can start removing variables where you can be like, okay, it doesn't differently affect, Bajorans and humans, so what common genetic factors do they all have? Oh, it affects Ferengi too. Okay, what common genetic
No, it
factors are
didn't
between
affect
all
the
three?
Didn't affect the
They were
Ferengi.
Or
one
didn't
group.
affect the Ferengi. Yeah,
Or at least not
Okay.
as quickly.
yeah, but like,
In
you
the
know what I'm
words of
saying
the
though, right?
Ferengi, we get dirty so that we can't get sick.
Yeah, there you go.
Let's see. Arende writes in, all species on Earth are descended from the same ancestor. A single disease can affect all life forms here.
Well, that's basically what we're saying, right? Is now that being said, like I said, the concept is cool.
Yeah,
It's a
not
neat idea.
It's not a nails on the chalkboard, naked now type
No,
of
it was-
episode. It's
It was way more like a known Hollywood virus trope.
Trope.
Like,
Yeah,
we assume you get infected, you have 5 to 10 hours, and at the end of the episode, the one character that's going to save the day, who is determined at the climactic point when the last survivor got sick as well, that's when the 12 hours is basically up and everybody's sick. And so it's like I don't fault them for any of that, especially spanning it into a 40-minute chunk. And then also, I like the setup of it being just an old IED that was just there.
yeah,
yeah. I also
Like-
like
Now-
how Kira. I really like Kira's character in this one because this is basically where we learn the distinction between Federation diplomacy and Bajoran bootstrap to just get the job done. She just takes off at a runabout, kidnaps the guy, and it's like she
and
is
just
so
drags him back.
and she is so sure of her position. She's like, I'm pretty sure I'm gonna get out of this one because you left a deadly virus on a space station, or your colleague left a deadly virus on a space station, and their lives matter more than yours right now. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Now, I will say, if I was going to rewrite this episode, because, we're the Writer Brothers, we should consider the rewrite. I would have done this as a computer virus that was affecting everybody's universal translators,
Ooh,
and
good
have it really nicely explained that because universal translators exist, not everyone
have existed for so long.
for so long that not everyone, no one bothers to learn other people's languages. No one and even within the Federation, the world you're from may have 6 or 7 different dialects of stuff, but the universal translators have compensated for this so well that we just
Dude, that
can't
would have been
function.
so hilarious. O'Neill or O'Reilly?
O'Brien.
Is it
O'Brien.
O'Brien. O'Brien just
Really? He
the
transferred from the
hardest
Enterprise. How do you not remember
Gaelic
O'Brien?
accent.
Yeah, exactly, right?
Just- that would be so funny.
They
They're
can't
all
understand
just
him because his
literally
accent's
speaking
thick. That would
different
be
language.
funny.
Yeah, like
Which
he
is
just goes into
everybody.
full Gaelic, right? And like Cisco sounds so New Orleans.
Yeah.
Like it would be ridiculous, and like everybody just sounds so off.
The
And-
dude with the sentient orb you can only hear him coming through his stomach. It turns out that the translator had even accounted for the muffle.
Right, like all that kind of stuff would be hilarious. Like it would work out so well, and it's a way to have the episode play out almost identically. Right?
Yeah.
But
and it probably would too.
yeah, and I mean you could even have it that because everybody's got a universal translator basically implanted, that this is going to affect that piece of tech and could cause
Something
brain
about
aneurysms.
the output. It messes with the output.
Yeah, or like it messes with it to add some sort of sonic resonance that's going to build up
Dude,
and kill
you
everybody.
don't even have to like actually have a device like shown on screen. You could just say that it's in the vocal cords.
Yeah.
And the virus is now causing it to like attach to the brainstem of the host, and now it's like that's what's caught, like it's leaking some kind of radiation, something, because it's been jacked up in voltage, and that's why the output is no longer working. But like the inputting perfectly. So every time like O'Brien speaks, it's this horrible Gaelic, and like I guess it'd have to be like.
Yeah, like basically O'Brien winds up sounding like the angry leprechaun on The Simpsons. Right? Yeah. Right, like I mean it'd just be perfect, right? I mean, and like and Cisco sounds like that like guy who works at the chicken joint that's clearly from New Orleans that no one can understand unless they hear it like 4 or 5 times.
Cajun. Hey, man.
Yeah, like full hardcore Cajun, right? Like it would be great. And like, and then like you have, Kira being all like, sounding completely different as well.
Some just
yeah, exactly, right? Like it sounds like some sort of angry pterodactyl or something. Like who knows, right? But it would be great. It would have been a perfect way to do it.
English anyway. Still, anyway.
Well, yeah. Anyway,
so
yeah,
so it's the Bajoran space station, and they're like technically the median race.
Well, no, the space station would be talking in Cardassian.
Right, like that would be even better, right? Because now even the
dude, that would
station's
be
like
more issues.
All of the consoles,
translating
revert back to Cardassian.
Yeah. Okay, so then we've got Captive Pursuit.
Yes, a substantial upgrade. Actually, I think one of the best episodes of season 1 so far, from what I remember. Which
you said that about every other episode so far.
Yeah. Welcome to Deep Space Nine, the best Star Trek.
Discuss.
This is peak Trek. It really is Trek fully realized, because it's not like I said. The next generation is the utopian dream. It's the idea. It's what we want to strive for. And Cisco tries to be like Picard. He tries to be the captain of, he tries to be the golden poster boy.
He tries to be the better man.
This show is the reality of that utopian vision. It's the grittiness. Cisco's stationed on the butt crack of Federation space. It's and he has to manage it. He has to convince a planet to join. He's now a religious figure, and he has to deal with capitalism. So it's a whole, it's a whole plethora of issues that he's put through.
Not just capitalism, but he has to deal with like reptilian space fascists as well, right?
I don't know anything about that. Or are you talking about in this episode?
Oh, well, I mean, in this episode he does as well.
It's implied they might be reptilian fascists. I don't know.
Yeah.
So
I was thinking more the Cardassians, but...
Oh, sorry. I thought that was a Dominion reference. My bad.
No.
You could call them fascists, I think. But more than anything, it just kind of seemed like...
I'm probably
tyrannical.
I'm probably
like
gonna
monarchy.
I'm probably gonna do a video in the near future, because the next one I think I want to do another Orville video this weekend. But I think I'm gonna do another one explaining why I believe that because there's people that like to say that Trek is a communist utopia, and I don't really agree with that. And there's other people that say, well, no, it's just a post-scarcity capitalism. And I think I figured it out. I think Trek is libertarian socialism.
I think that's
Yeah.
the social aspect of it.
It's a replicator communism. Like, well, it has to be some form of communism because there is no material gain outside of prestige and
See, I don't
title.
actually think it fits into our current economic thinking at all. I think that the replicator, or at least the concept of the replicator, completely destroys the concept of economy as we know it.
Yes.
There's no reason to try to apply our standards to it. If Trek was anything close to what we have, I would probably be calling it more of a like a beyond planetary, like a quadrant based democracy where the economy or the macroeconomic factors tend towards socialism, but don't necessarily get there.
Well, and they don't have to because there's no
republic. Yeah, because
it is a republic because they have the prime directive.
Thing.
Yeah,
I think that's the biggest thing with the fact that economically they don't have economy.
No,
like the whole economy comes
hold
from
on
supply and demand.
Hold on, they do. Interfederation economy functions very differently from the outside. Now they don't dive into it.
In that case, it's an open market.
It
so
is.
Then it's an intergalactic republic with an open market.
Yeah.
A regulated.
They do have free trade
because
they do
have illegal.
You do have illegal goods and stuff. Yeah.
And so if they have illegal goods, then that means they have to have legal goods. If they have legal goods, that means they have to have regulatory authorities.
There's elements of the free market that are definitely a part of it, but it is regulated in such a way that, I think in Trek, if you wanted to amass material wealth, you could. It's just no one's going to give a shit. I could replicate all of their crap you just replicated too.
Didn't they do that recently with the Gold Machine episode? Something with the Gold Machine. They gave a guy a replicator and he just made a bunch of money.
I think you're getting your shows mixed up.
Yeah, I don't recall that one. I don't
recall that ever happening in Star Trek because they just
been TNG.
It's the whole point of the replicator is it creates a post-scarcity society, which allows no longer the struggle for the monetary. Although I think personally that this will be a good debate for Council of Shadows.
I don't think it's so much that there isn't scarcity. I think it's
shout out to my STO Armada.
I think it's more in the realm of
our STO Armada.
Yeah,
it's a lot more of a transitory material. I don't know exactly if it's been explained how the replicator works, but my theory
converts energy
is that
into matter.
They just have the elements of different things, the different matters ready to go for the replicator to then just reshape the atoms into what it needs to be.
So I'm about to go hardcore nerd, but
Please
here we
do.
go. According to the Star Trek Next Generation Tech Manual, what they do is there are two sources of material for the replicator. The first one is any recycled material, so anything that they've broken down into its constituent atoms, they save that material to repurpose into new material. They can also directly translate energy into matter. So more or less, let's say you had 5 pounds of gold and you're trying to make a 10-pound gold item. They use what they had and then convert the rest from energy.
Well, and then they use the energy that's created by the conversion in and of itself to add to the energy. See, so it's just molecular reconstruction. Which at that point, that means that there is a version of scarcity that does exist at scale. You have to always have the transitory material available. But
the way I like to think about it is
very little it really seems like the machine from Back to the Future when he's just throwing banana peels and styrofoam cups into the thing in Back to the Future
Mr. Fusion. Yeah.
Mr. Fusion. And if that's the case, to me that makes sense. If all energy or if matter can't be created or destroyed and all matter has energy, at some point it control energy And you can manipulate
real
matter.
quick-
You can manipulate matter.
Real quick, John, I just want to say, obligatory like and subscribe.
So what I would actually say is this. I think on a microeconomic scale, so like the individual scale, scarcity effectively doesn't exist. On a macro, or actually on a planetary,
Backwards. I would say micro
planetary
it does
economic scale,
unless
it
you're in
does.
Starfield. If you're in Starfleet, like if you're a member of Starfleet, it doesn't.
Member
but
of the
like, I haven't
Federation.
seen anybody. Well, no, like of Starfleet, because like the poor people like on the space station haven't.
They're not
been
Federation
helped
citizens.
out. Exactly.
So what I'm talking about is purely inside the Federation. We have the smaller scale people, like individuals, are imposed scarcity, but realistically, planetary economic systems have to exist.
Yeah. Like, I mean, well, there's tons of trade, like, tons of episodes where the Enterprise is escorting a different trade vessel to point A and delivering something because it can't be materialized for some reason or another. And that to me makes sense, especially like there's the episode with Data when he gets like captured by the super ultra elite in the galaxy, and like he's like, why do you guys care about all this like materialism? And they're like, what else are we gonna do?
Right. I mean, like, admittedly, let's be honest. You and I both know that if we could have our own starships, PD would be running around with like a flying pimp mobile, basically, full of all kinds of really cool stuff. Right? I mean,
I've got several ships from Star Trek Online that I can pull right now.
Yeah, exactly, right? Like, you just know he'd have one of those and he'd be flying around in it, and the inside of it would be like all Persian rugs and craziness. Right? Like,
depends on the ship. I might have different varieties for whatever.
Right,
like
but
flying.
I mean, like, but that's cool, right? I mean, like, I guess the way I look at it is, I get why they say that, like, if you can have anything, then certain stuff doesn't matter, right? Like, if you can have all the toys, do you really want all the toys? I get that. That being said, further we go in Deep Space Nine, you will see that people, for example, keep collections of items, right? Even Federation people, right? Because they like them, right? You know, just because you could have
a big thing on that in Lower Decks.
Yeah.
There's a scene about keeping different like trophies from different negotiations, like gifts that were given during the negotiation. And to me, like I think I do think both the realities exist. Like, part of me is like, if I had a home base that I was guaranteed to have forever, hell yeah, I would stock it with memorabilia all day, every day. But because I don't have like a guaranteed property right now, I'm more inclined to be like, what's the least amount of stuff I can bring with me on any given move?
Same.
Yeah. I mean, like,
And
I'll be honest.
With a
since
replicator, dude, that means nothing. I'm just throwing all of this into the replicator furnace, so then when I get to my next place, I go, all right, get back.
Yeah, I mean, like, okay, I can speak to this a little bit, because I have a 3D printer, and I love my 3D printer. And there's a point you reach after you've printed like a dozen or 2 dozen things, where you're like, yeah, I could paint it. Yeah, well,
Still haven't reached it yet.
I could paint, or like, I could print a whole bunch of models. I could like print myself a Warhammer army if I chose to. But I've already got enough to paint. I've already got this and that and whatnot. I don't need to do more right now. And I think that kind of logic would hit me too if I had a replicator. I'd be like, yeah, I'll make what I need using a replicator. I'll probably make some cool stuff that I like. But there's a certain point where I'd go, this is getting overboard.
Yeah.
I think I'd leave it alone. And I think that's a natural human reaction.
I would have such a problem with, all right, can I have a burger? All right, now can it be fries? All right, now is it a chocolate shake? All right, now is it a shoe? All right, now is it a left shoe?
Hold
and
on.
just keep changing the items over and over and over.
No, what you want to do is you want to go use
stuff.
use the replicator in the holodeck. That way, after you've eaten the food, you walk out and it's like you never ate it. That's how you eat garbage without it affecting your body. Arendi writes in, I printed myself a model beehive, some D&D terrain, then I kind of lost interest.
Yeah, I mean,
it starts to become a chore. All right, so we do got to move
all
on
right.
to the
So
next
let's move on to
episode.
Cap.
So
yeah,
I'm going to read the storyline for this one from their IMDb's. So here we go. Deep Space Nine detects an unknown ship coming from the Gamma Quadrant at the other side of the wormhole. The ship has severe engine trouble, and its pilot seems very nervous and reluctant to accept any help. Finally, O'Brien convinces him to come aboard. He introduces himself as Tosk, and he apparently comes from a very different culture as he understands nothing of the ways of the Alpha Quadrant. He claims the wormhole caused the ship's problems. O'Brien seems to really like the guy, but senses quickly that he has a secret. He also finds out Tosk lied, discovering his ship has weapon damage. Then Tosk is caught by Odo, trying to open a weapons locker. Just want to get a phaser, man. It's cool.
So, I mean, to me, what this episode is it's space fox hunting, is what it is, right? I mean, that's kind of what it boils. Yeah, like from our perspective, that's what it boils down to. Additionally, O'Brien currently gets to cause others to suffer, which I mean, hey, adds into my general theory on the universe. But honestly, this is really the first refugee we get from the Delta Quadrant. And our first taste in that place is a very, very different version. Like, it's a very, very different place than what we're used to in terms of the Alpha Quadrant. It's got strange new worlds. As opposed to rehashed new worlds. But anyway.
Shout out to Strange New Worlds.
And
do
some
better.
comments.
All right, Arendi writes in, or Star Trek's version of Predator. Well, that's a good reference.
That's a good reference. Well, I mean, I think we're going to get better hunters down the road. But
it's a backwards Predator because the Predator, like, Tosk was the prey. He had all the tech of the Predator, and he was the prey. So that was I thought it was super awesome to finally see high-tech armor.
Yeah.
I feel like I've watched all of Star Trek that I've seen so far, and I've seen one episode where somebody can take a shot to the face and go, stop.
Yeah. That tickles. Don't do it again.
Well, I mean, like, I think the headcanon piece I've gone with is throughout human history, if you look at military technology, you can base it on the fight between the better weapon and the better armor. And I feel like at some point, phasers were like, no, armor is no longer a factor in the equation whatsoever.
They have settings that you can actually specifically vaporize clothing.
Yeah, like when you can get that, like, ridiculous in terms of firepower, I guess, the fight between armor and weapon has been decided, and weapon won. And
I mean,
at
if
this
you can
point,
literally
but then these
vaporize
guys showed
somebody
up and
into
said
dust
no.
in one shot, I mean...
yeah, well, I mean, these guys showed up and were like, well, actually, we found this material that turns out is strong enough to tank it, right? That's the interesting piece, right?
But to me, it is definitely a very, like, it's fun, because, like, stormtroopers, they seemed like they might have some cool armor, and then it turns out they're basically just wearing shoulder pads.
Their armor is specifically designed to kill them when they're hit with a bolt. It fries them on the inside. That was one theory I read, and I was like, yeah, that makes sense. I mean, even if a laser grazes by them, sometimes they go, oh, dead.
There was this theory that I read that, like, or didn't read, I think it was, I want to say it was film theory, and they broke down, like, why the Empire uses TIE fighters and stormtrooper, like, material and all that
Swarm
stuff.
tactics.
According to the, like, universe, it's the cheapest.
Yeah. Oh,
like,
yes.
It is. Like, they're not even paying for full visuals in their pilots. Like, their cockpits can't see around the wings, and they don't care. Like, they're only blitzkrieg. And so everything is the cheapest. So then if it was found out that the cheapest item also fried you from the inside out, oh well, it was the cheapest, and you're the cheapest body we could get to fill it.
Yeah.
Like it
Arendi,
all in lines with the lore.
Arendi writes it says, and the Federation never copied that armor, an armor that can withstand a phaser blast. The other point is too, Arendi, and I don't know how recently you watched the episode or if you've been watching along with us, but they actually specifically say during the fight scene, Cisco tells them to increase to setting 6. So I think that's kind of to explain that, again, the reason the Federation doesn't bother with armor is because their weapons can just vaporize it at the highest setting. So just
Yeah, like
but, hey,
yeah,
it's a
like
good
if your
point to bring up.
if your hand weapon can wipe out a building with by just like a small setting adjustment, it makes armor kind of pointless, right?
But this is your hunting armor. And
Yeah,
it
well, I mean,
worked all the way
ceremonial.
up to stun 6.
And in their spare
so
time,
it could be that like this is their weakest version of their super strong armor.
maybe that's a good point too. And not to go too far on a quick, but I do just want to know, John, you bring up a good point, and there's actually a video game called Star Wars Empire at War that actually acknowledges the way they have it set up is the Empire is intentionally cheap. Like all their crap, their spaceships, their troops, they are stupid easy to build, but that's the way you're supposed to play that faction is, war of attrition. You're going to throw all your enemies at them until they run out. The rebels are much more expensive, and then they had a third faction in the expansion that you could siphon money off, but it was also could get very expensive for the higher end ship. So it was an interesting game. Definitely worth checking out.
All right, yeah, no,
That's awesome.
Also, you can build the Death Star and blow up planets. So come on.
yes.
I like the Age of Empires where you could cheat in a Death Star.
I want to. Lucasfilm or LucasArts or whatever the Lucasfilm Games, I guess they're calling themselves now. If you guys are watching, please give us a remaster of Galactic Battlegrounds.
Oh yes, I would love that. Or what was the big one that they made? Empire at War, I think it was.
That's what I was just talking about. Yes.
Yeah. That one was fantastic. Empire at War and Empire at War Forces of Corruption.
Yeah.
Was-
Forces of
yeah.
Corruption. That's the expansion. Definitely worth the time. And John, you need to get a gaming PC. All right. So back to Star
Spend
Trek.
money.
Back to not a galaxy far, far away, but a galaxy called Milky Way. We have a lot of good themes in this episode.
Was that Robert Frost?
What?
Anyway,
That's Red.
no. So getting back to it, yeah, there are a lot of good themes in this episode. Specifically, I think there's a lot of discussion about hunting for sport. I think there's a lot of discussion about how much you should be welcoming of outsiders and outside ideals. I think that's definitely something that gets covered too.
Well, and that's just it. We think it's hunting for sport from our perspective, our limited perspective on their culture, and for all we know, it could literally just be the building blocks of their society, and there's a lot more to it. That's what they seem to allude to. Like this wasn't the founder of Jimmy John's going and shooting up a bunch of endangered species in Africa. This is like this is their culture. This is their custom.
Yeah.
This is like, to us it seems foreign and stupid, but to them it could be their foundation. It could literally be the reason that they don't nuke each other to death.
Well,
Yeah.
no, they said it that like the Tosk culture is to be Tosk, and this other culture's culture is to honor Tosk by hunting Tosk. Like there was, even though it was only like piecemealed in conversation, but they took a lot of time to explain that like this isn't just a simple predator prey.
No, I mean, I'm not.
This isn't Klingon being hunted by Romulan. Like it was really awesome.
No, and please don't misunderstand. I am not saying that hunting for sport is in any way not something that can't be done or is immoral or anything like that.
Absolutely.
This is a species that, yeah, this is their culture, right? Like, Americans and hand egg, right? Or Canadians and hockey. It's part of the culture. It's ingrained. It's how it is. And, it's not necessarily a bad thing, but I do think this episode forces us to look at this and look at, what if you were in a situation where, you know, like this kind of really out of control, elaborate game of tag was part of the culture?
Yeah.
And oh, go for it.
Rende writes in, I think I haven't watched DS9 since it originally aired. Maybe gave the series once a few years later. I have a pretty good memory, but it's not perfect, and some episodes I remember. So, Rende, I'm actually going to start trying to post regular on social media, both Twitter and Facebooks. Going to be trying to get reminders of the episodes. I've been meaning to do it. The whole point of a community watch through is to remind people, hey, next week we're going to be watching this and this. Please feel free to join us. Actually, next week, I can go ahead and plug it right quick, is we're going to be doing a special one. We'll explain it the day of, but this next week's going to be the musical Sound of Music, and then Deep Space Nine. We're doing 2 episodes a week, and I think that's what we're just going to stick with at this point, guys, because that's making a lot of sense. Next week's 2 episodes of DS9 are going to be Q-less and
Oh
Dex.
boy.
Oh, we got a good one next week.
Oh,
already. We got a
boy.
good show between both those episodes. Oh, it's gonna be good.
Oh
So-
boy.
And then yeah, so next week if you want to get caught up to us then, I mean you're not too far behind. Oh man.
Yes, Arende, it's that episode.
Yep.
That's all I'm gonna say from that comment.
That's going away. No hard feelings, buddy. It's just someone has a... Or wait, John, did you watch Q-less already?
I want to say I watched both of them.
Watch them again.
Okay.
Yeah, probably.
So, yeah, it's
We're getting into some of the better plot threads that Deep Space Nine
I think
tries to clear up.
I'm getting to the point where I think while season 1 and 2 do have some bummers in them that I remember, although I don't know about season 2 now. I'm gonna have to see. Season 2 is gonna be our first full season of 24 episodes, so that's gonna take 12 weeks. Jeez.
We'll get it. We'll get it.
Absolutely. We're here to do this and have fun. But I'm realizing I think the only reason season 1 and 2 kind of get a bad rap is because once 3 hits, it's game on. And once the Defiant shows up.
Yeah.
So-
Well, I mean, once we get the primary motivator for all the seasons to come.
Oh yeah.
Right.
No, I freaking love this show. But Captive Pursuit, I think, does a really good job of pointing out the fact that I mean, Cisco does everything right in this episode, and I think, and so does O'Brien. It's definitely a super relevant lesson for today's current climate and culture. That when just because you might disagree with somebody else's culture on a personal level, it doesn't mean you're right. And it's not about trying to force your ideals. You know, Cisco, the Prime Directive is something that I think we all should consider adopting for personal ideology. Now, I'm not saying you have to, obviously. I'm 100% against trying to control people. However, I would encourage someone to actually think of what General Order 1 says and to really consider following it, because it means, you know, non-interference, do not interfere. And I think that's a very high point to take in life, because it allows for the opportunity to bring the cultures together. It allows for the opportunity to find some common ground. And obviously, O'Brien and Tosk were able to get along to a certain point. And in the end, while O'Brien realized, okay, not only is there nothing I can do, the fact that Tosk didn't want to seek asylum was a pivotal moment, because then O'Brien realized, okay, he's not going to accept Federation idealism. It's now time for me to take that Federation idealism and take the higher step and respect his idealism and fulfill his purpose. And in the end, he ends up giving them what they wanted and what the hunters wanted. And I think that is a huge lesson that a lot of people, especially myself, you know, I'm not perfect. I'm getting a little bit better each day, but I definitely noticed that, oh, well, you do that in your life? Well, that just makes you less than me, right? No. I might not agree with certain people's lifestyles, and they might not agree with mine and my beliefs, and that's okay.
Yeah.
I don't need to agree with you. Just respect my right to exist and have ideas, and I'll respect yours. and don't
Yeah,
come into my house and tell me where to shit.
Yeah, I mean that basically I think is, you know, something that we can all kind of learn from in terms of the Prime Directive is, you know, there's a lot of ethical and moral pieces of it where you sit there and go, you know, I really should try to interfere here because it potentially saves lives and I care about that and all that. And yes, those kind of moral quandaries are interesting. But at the end of the day, look, when it comes to fundamental day-to-day stuff, right? One of the things that we're actually concerned about as in terms of as a species, when running into an alien species, is if they're an advanced culture, it could very easily, if not wipe us out militarily or you know, economically or anything like that, it could just wipe us out as a society, as a unique culture, because they just have a culture that we get obsessed with and get subsumed into.
Right.
And the way I look at the Prime Directive is it's an attempt to prevent that from happening, to allow people to continue to be their unique culture and share their cultural uniqueness with everyone else, because a broader cultural base at the end of the day is able to weather storms easier than a monoculture. Right. And I think that's an important lesson to take away. I think it's an important lesson for us as human beings to take away. It doesn't necessarily mean, hey, we don't help when there's a problem, but we have to look at how that other person would like the help and how we offer the help. I think is more important than anything else, right?
Absolutely.
And that they know to ask for that help and that we're available for it.
And I think the more important thing to say, well, maybe not more important, but I think what is equally as important, if not more so, is you have to respect people's right to refuse your help. And
absolutely.
For some people, because they feel like they've been created specifically to help people, that can be a very hard one to accept, because you know, they take that as a personal offense. They're like, oh, you're rejecting my help, that means you're rejecting me, that means you're just a slap in the face to my ideal. No, that's not it at all. It's, well, okay, maybe it depends on the person in that situation. They might just see you as the opportunist that you might be, or that you might come off as, and might not want to give you the satisfaction. And but you have to realize that's someone's own personal problem at that point. Yes, I'm definitely one that will try to help people. I'm in no position to, being DFP all the time, but I'm still going to do what I can with what little I have. However, I'm not going to force the issue at the same time. That's not right either, because if someone doesn't want my help, okay, I can at least go to bed at night knowing I offered, you said no, and then you died. All right.
Yeah. You gave it a try, and
I also have to respect your decision.
Mm-hmm. And I will say this, you know, just because you may not have the monetary capability to help somebody doesn't mean that you don't sacrifice your time for them or sacrifice your knowledge for them. There are a lot of ways to help somebody that don't necessarily involve dollar bills. That all being said, yeah, I mean, people have the right to absolutely say, no, look, I've got this. I'm going to handle it my way. And you know what? That's fine too, right? I think the best thing we can all do is not only respect people's rights to do this, that, and the other thing, but the right to also just be a hard-nosed, iron-willed, stubborn human being and go, okay, well, you can choose to do that. I made the offer to try to help. If you don't need it or don't want it, that's okay. That being said, I mean, I always appreciate it when other people reach out to me to offer me help. I always find it incredibly touching.
Sometimes it's even just that thought. Like, I might not take it, but the fact that you give a shit really does make a difference.
Yeah, and I'm also going to say this, and I personally feel like this is being lost in the modern age. It's the understanding that being polite, while not necessary, is the social lubricant that prevents people from grinding their gears on each other. Okay?
I'd have to agree.
Right? I mean, even if you're like, look, I shouldn't have to be nice to you. Okay, fine. But you don't have to be. But if you want to be able to get along with people, a little bit of kindness, a little bit of respect goes an awful long way. Right?
Look at this show.
If you make being polite and being nice your default, it's a lot harder to realize who you have to be mean to. Because like most people stop beefing with you. Most people get out of your way.
Mm-hmm.
Arendi writes in, what makes it even harder not to help people is when you're used to run multiple scenarios in your head, got a decent idea what could bring the best result, got refused, and see the other face plant. Yeah, but see, that's like that's
But
a being
you shouldn't take that. You
that's
shouldn't
paying
take that.
attention.
You shouldn't take that to sleep with you.
Well,
Yeah,
I'm going to bring out a line that comes from Stargate, that I feel like is probably the way that I deal with it when stuff like that happens, and that is, the very young do not always do as they are told. And you know what? That works on many different levels.
Sometimes to learn fire's hot, you gotta get burned.
That's
and
it.
Some people gotta learn the hard way, and yeah, it sucks, but
Well, there's this idea, tangent a little bit, but I had a friend that they got scared while they were at work, and then they got home and they were fine, and they were like dealing with it and struggling, like why am I like, did I do everything right or anything like that? And it's like, well, your goal was to get home. You didn't think you were going to, for whatever reason you didn't think you were going to, and now you're home. You did everything right. And in the case of Arendi, like, you knew what could happen. You told the friend what could happen, and you were right because they didn't listen.
Mm-hmm.
You're still right. Like don't take that to stroke your ego, but do take that to stroke your understanding, your experience. Like, everything you thought could happen did happen. Well, check that one off the book. Like, now you know that if you see these events playing out in your own life or in another friend's life, you now have evidence to A, support that, B, you knew it then, you know it now, and here's the person that didn't listen then, so don't follow in their footsteps. And again, if that person goes and falls again, you go, well, now I have two people. You just add to your repertoire of experience. You're not a bad person because somebody rejected your help, and you're definitely not a bad person if you offered the solution that they then rejected. Like, you went as far as anybody could have asked you to go.
That's it. Now,
arguably beyond.
Since we're running down the clock here, there is one more very important piece of news we do have to cover. And that, of course, being the passing of Louise Fletcher. You will get to meet her as Kai Wynn, and I do apologize. I will be a little light. There will be light spoiling of Deep Space Nine, but
no worries.
Louise Fletcher, she was the original actress who played Nurse Ratched in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. She won an Academy Award for Best Actress, a BAFTA Award, and a Golden Globe. She's been in Picket Fences, Joan of Arcadia, Girl Bosses, and of course, she plays the religious leader, Kai Wynn, in Deep Space Nine. Or as we all lovingly refer to her as, Space Karen. Now, in real life, Louise is known far and wide through the community of being absolutely a wonderful, charming, and caring human being that would go out of her way to talk to any fan about anything ever, and was just on record as being one of the sweetest actresses ever to live. So, gentlemen, if I could get you to raise your glass to one of the greats, a woman who managed to so perfectly play the woman we love to hate, Miss Louise Fletcher. Have a wonderful passing. And yes, she has done all kinds of stuff. American from Alabama, not exactly who you would expect to be the kind of actress that she turned into. She
I mean-
started life with very different ambitions.
I mean, being an arrogant religious leader in a Star Trek show was that she was already, born in the area for that. So,
Mm-hmm.
it came from the Bible Belt. Just a little religious joke, guys.
Yeah.
It's okay. How we treat death, just of course how we treat life.
Treat life, yeah. But yeah, she was involved in a lot of acting. She didn't really start out with that in mind initially, right? She, but got into it and got quite deep in. She has 2 sons. She actually took time off of being an actress to raise them. So, I mean, she did what she felt was right by her family and by her career. She actually received an honorary degree from Gallumet University. So she's, honestly, she's done a lot in her life. I did not get the chance to meet her personally. But she was at a couple of conventions that I attended over the years. And no one had anything negative to say about her. It's a hard thing, really, when you think about it, to play somebody, like to play the bad guy, to play the individual that everyone despises. But I feel like it really truly speaks to an actor's capability to generate that much, consternation in the fan base, and yet still be a really decent, really wonderful human being when not wearing the costume. And I think that speaks highly to the kind of person she was. And 86 that's a good run, man.
88
or 88 is a good run, right? I mean, I intend to live forever, but for regular mortal humans who don't intend to suck the life out of anyone that they can possibly grab, that's a really good run and a classy lady, worthy of respect right up until the end.
Yeah,
So.
and here's the other thing too, guys. Like, she's an Oscar award winning actress. There we go. The little bit of babble must have kicked in. And she got an Oscar back when it still mattered. I personally find the award shows these days to be entirely nonsense. But back in the day, when they seemed more honest, at least, she was an Academy Award winner, and then she did Star Trek. And she is actually on record as saying that Star Trek was one of the high points of her life and career. She was so glad to have done it. She still got fan mail years after the fact from people who were like, "Oh man, I loved hating you so much." And she sadly, unlike Shatner, she just dove into the fandom and absolutely was proud of what she did. And Rende writes in, "I intend to live for as long as I want to. Forever has some unpleasant consequences. The universe's heat death for starters." Yeah, well, I mean, I think beyond mortality there's more, but that's discussion for the Rogue Council.
Yes.
In the meantime, yes, she definitely lived a full and complete life. My end goal is 80, and then the bonus years beyond that are what I'll be grateful to have. And so she definitely did. She lived a full life, and she raised children, and she was a well-known actress, Oscar-winning actress, who then also was in the best Star Trek series ever. What?
And she really helped make the series the
Absolutely.
best series ever.
I talked. Someone on Twitter mentioned that she was only in 14 episodes. I never knew that until I read that, and I was like, that is incredible. Because for 14 episodes, those 14 episodes, you take her out, and DS9 loses some of its quality. That is how much of an impact this character has. And I felt like she was there for more than 14. I could have sworn she was there every other week.
Well, I mean, isn't that what makes an amazing space, Karen? Is like, you're always worried she's gonna show up, even where she really doesn't belong.
Yeah, and I don't want to dive too much into the
Bro,
character.
that makes her extremely a space Karen, because, like, talk to anybody who deals with Karens,
Yeah.
and they're like it sounds like it's every single day.
Yep.
But in reality, it was probably like once a month or once every 2 months.
Once a year, but it feels like every day. Yeah, Arende
But
says
it's enough
not.
to just ruin all the other work days.
Yep, Arende says not just some, a lot of its quality. I totally agree. Like
Yeah.
she really did, and that's the thing. Like she absolutely deserved her name in the credits, not just as a guest star. I think also Aaron Eisenberg and pretty much that's what I love about DS9. All the supporting cast. Guys, they're not just supporting cast. You take one pillar, you take Eisenberg out, you take Grodenchek or Louise Fletcher out.
Wasn't
DS9,
Or even, or of course,
What's
Coombs.
the definition of
Or-
a support beam?
Yeah, no, the
Load-bearing.
word, it's the literal definition of the word support applies to the DS9 supporting cast.
Yeah, it's like load-bearing supporting cast.
Load-bearing cast. Yes, that's exactly what I agree. Yes. Yeah, they're not.
I think that's the best
Should
term
be
I've ever
called
heard.
the
for it.
heavy hitters, or like the one-hit wonders for anybody that only did one episode and crushed it. Like, just start referring to them like songs.
Yeah.
The one album artist.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now she's fantastic, and she's definitely one that I that I really wanted to meet, because she didn't feel bad about any of some of the fan hate mail she thought was entertaining, and she got it at the time. Thankfully, that was a short-lived for her, because in the long run, all she got after that, at least from what she says, was she would still get fan letters about how people, I love your performance, you're so great, I love hating you. But she just took it like she really was that type. She felt genuine. That's what I'm trying to say. She felt genuine. I would have loved to have met her and had a chance to sit down and have some coffee or whatever. I think she lived in France. When she moved on from this world. So maybe a French croissant or something, and some Earl Grey tea.
There you go.
That would have to be the way. That's how you do it. But
see, I don't know. I feel like if I was going to be there, I'd want to share a glass of spring wine, but the good stuff, the kind that they don't serve to humans.
Or a morning mimosa. If they
There
do
you
those
go.
there, I don't know if that's where they came from, but I know here in America we love them. She was definitely one of the better Hollywood actors that she just. You could tell by her life and accomplishments, she wasn't out there for the fame as much as just doing the job, and she was clearly a I can't think if there's a word for this.
She's definitely one of the actresses that did the job because she enjoyed it.
She enjoyed
not
the job,
because of the
she
paycheck,
also loved
right?
the fans. She also loved entertaining the fans, and that's tremendous. Like, that's the one thing that I can't stay. Like, I'm not saying that someone's a bad actor if they only go to their job. If that's how you are, I'll respect that. But
She's
just
a
know,
performer.
I'm not going to go out of my way to
She
want to meet
did
you.
both.
Yeah, exactly.
Like a stage comedian, like somebody that actually goes down and meets their fans, meets the group, but then also is not that same person when they're doing their job.
Yeah.
They're who they need to be for the scene.
Yeah. So
I think that's really cool.
Yeah, and
a true artist.
Yeah. And earned respect by her actions. And that to me is a huge thing, right? And as time goes on, we just, you see the quality of her acting just dramatically improve from season to season, even though it's only like 14 episodes, right? We even see that with a couple of the other, actors in the series. Like, Isaacs was same kind of way. He just got better with time, right? Granted, Coombs is playing half the background characters at one point or another. And, he's there too. Like, there isn't I am very, very impressed with the quality of the team that came together to produce Deep Space Nine. And yeah, load-bearing actors, I guess, is the best way to explain it, because everybody involved in that series seems to have hauled that series up and made sure it stayed and just kept that space station floating by sheer willpower alone. And
to me, it feels like a lot of people, like, obviously I was too young to notice how important Star Trek was in terms of like Star Wars now really seems to feel close to that. The theme music is kicking us off. We're getting the exit music. Well, I was about to get into a diatribe. Yeah, our theme music did kick in, Arinda. You are correct. We're going over showtime. Our producer in the studio he's left.
Yeah.
He said that we are to stay on the stream for ever.
yes,
And we're
this
not
stream
allowed
may
to
not
get up
actually
from our
ever
chairs
end.
ever again. Oh, yeah, and he's back.
Oh, yeah, there we go.
What do you mean it's not ever gonna? Oh, did we
Yeah,
just
the
go through
theme
the?
music? Yeah.
Oh, I had my times mixed up. Well, that's. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed the tune in our little post game show. As
We love you.
sometimes happens here.
Take care, everybody.
But yeah, we'll be back